I have never, in all the churches I've been a part of, I have never been a part of a church that had real live missionaries that were members. And we do. Steve and Celeste Brubaker are retired missionaries from the International Mission Board. They served for over 2 decades in Germany. And so they're going to share with us this morning about some really neat things that they got to experience and still are a part of. I won't tell much more about that. I'll let them share their testimony with that. But they are my small group leaders that I'm part of in my growth group. They are leading the one that I'm involved in, and we've gotten to know each other and become friends. So I'm excited that they're going to speak.
Pastor Craig's really great. He said, take as much time as you want. So it was something like that. I tend to forget times a little bit, but we'll have you out of here before 1 o'clock, so it won't be a problem. For those of you who don't know, we actually come from Pennsylvania. That's where we both grew up. We met at college, fell in love, and got married. My degree was not anything dealing with Bible or religious studies or anything like that. I was a computer science major. And I graduated college, and we began life kind of going down the road of the American dream. You make a good salary as a computer programmer. We did that for 7 years. We were having our children. We have a total of 4 children. And life was good, but God was working in my heart saying something needs to change. And I didn't know why. We were actively involved in a church. We were involved in visitation. I was a deacon. We were doing all sorts of things, but God had other plans. And after wrestling with it for a while, we finally gave in to God's call that He made clear in our lives that He wanted us to be missionaries and serve on the foreign field. 21 years later, after we completed our assignment there, we can say we wouldn't go back and trade those 21 years for all the money I could have made as a foreign missionary, as a computer programmer. And my encouragement to you at the beginning of this is do what God's telling you to do, even if it requires a change in location, a change in vocation, or any other kind of change. Now, we did most of our service in Germany in the former East Germany. We got there about 6 years after the wall came down. So all the people who were there, all the adults, they knew very well what it was to live and suffer under communism. And one of the things they told us was how difficult it was to even get goods and services. So I brought along with me my little toy Trabi car. That's pretty much what all the people in East Germany drove, the full-size version. And they thought, the communists did, if they could give everybody the same car, then that would get rid of jealousies and everything, because you wouldn't be saying, I wish I had a car like that. They all had the same one. Now, it took a long time to get these cars. There was a 10-year waiting list. And imagine this, you had to pay all your money up front. So the story goes that one young man in East Germany wanted to get one of these cars. So he went into the government office to order his car, and the man on the other side of the desk said, you have to pay all the money up front. And he said, yes, I understand that. So he gave him his money. The man counted it and said, okay, it's all good. Come back in 10 years and pick up your car. And the man looked at him and said, what day of the week would you like me to be here? He thought that was a strange question. He's their young man. You're coming back in 10 years. What on earth difference does it make what day of the week you show up? And he said, well, I got word the plumber's going to be there on Thursday, so I thought it would be good if... It was difficult to get anything done in those days. Now, to learn a little bit more about Germany and missions where we were, I need a couple of volunteers. John, thank you so much for volunteering. Come on up here. And the only way I can think to really make this fair is, come on up here, is to have Pastor John against Pastor John. So come on up here, Pastor John. We got 2 Johns, and we're going to be learning about missions. I figure we got John. You learned about missions at seminary, right? So he knows everything about missions from seminary. And John, well, he's just so old. He's learned about everything over the years. So come on over here on the other side, John. Okay, we have here, basically, these are all true-false questions. And we're going to go ahead and just see who knows the most about missions, and hopefully they're going to learn something along the way. Now, I do have to tell you, we shared this one time with the senior citizens of the church, and John was there, but I doubt he remembers any of that, so it's not too big of a disadvantage for you. All right, first question. True or false? there are approximately 10,000 IMB missionaries worldwide. Is that true or false? Don't look at, I'm looking at the sheet. 10,000. True or false? Okay. I'm sorry, there are about 4,000 IMB missionaries serving around the world. It's still a lot, and it'd be great if we could get to 10,000 sometime, but the good news is the score is tied. Okay. In Germany, true or false again, religion may not be taught in public schools. Is it? In Germany, where we serve.
Public schools.
Can it be taught?
Religion taught.
Yes. Can religion be taught in public schools? Yes or no?
What do you think?
Yeah. He says it can be taught, but it is a true statement. Very good. Okay. There. In Germany, there are two state-sponsored religions, the Lutherans and the Catholics. And because it is a state-sponsored religion, they are allowed to teach it in school. Now, they don't really learn about faith in Jesus Christ and need to make a commitment to him or anything like that. They just learn about church history and boring things like that. But in any event, it is taught in the public schools. Okay, now, within Baptist churches in Germany, okay, so this is our brother churches over there, children are rarely baptized until they're at least 12 years old. Is that true or false? What do you think, Pastor John? We'll come back to you.
That's true.
He says true, and rarely baptized till they're 12. It is a true statement. Very good. Okay, they had a slow start, but they're really coming in their own at this point. The Baptist churches over there, they take it seriously to not be like the two state-sponsored churches which both baptize babies. And there's about 2/3 of everyone in Germany who belongs to one of the state churches via infant baptism. So they want to make sure before they have anybody baptized in a Baptist church that it's not going to be viewed as an infant baptism and that it's truly a believer's baptism. So they go a little bit overboard. They wait a little bit longer to make sure and differentiate themselves from the state churches. Okay, true or false? One of our colleagues is growing jalapeno peppers as an outreach ministry.
That's true.
It is a true statement. Very good, Pastor John. He takes a 1-point lead. One of our colleagues went over, and they're not in Germany, they're in Kosovo, and they couldn't get any jalapeno peppers. They started growing it. Friends and neighbors liked them. They wanted them, and this has mushroomed into an industry where they sell 20,000 jars of jalapeno peppers every year. They're creating jobs for people while being able to share about Jesus at the same time. So John's taking a 1-point lead. Now, this is your chance.
More of you about hell, I suppose.
Okay, they could probably use that. If you think this is hot, you know, we can go down that road. This is your chance to catch up. Let's see. We're going to do this one. Okay, a cultural question here. He's not looking. He's not like you. German children must typically decide by the 4th grade if they're going to go to college. Is a true statement. Do German children need to know by the 4th grade if they're going to college? It is a true statement. You have caught up to him. Basically, elementary school goes through 4th grade, and then it goes into college prep direction or more of a trade school route. So at a very early age, it's very difficult for the children to know at that age, but that's kind of when the decision has to be made. Okay, one final question. In France, Germany, and the United Kingdom combined, there are a total of over 10 million Muslims living in those 3 countries. Is that true or false? We'll start here. It is a true statement. And I mention that because we are trying to reach people with the truth, with the gospel of Christ. We are not the only ones trying to reach Europeans. We're trying to reach Germans and others around that area. If we don't reach them for Christ, other people representing false religions will reach them. That's why it's so imperative that we do everything we can to emphasize missions around the world. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your participation. You did great. High score.
Well, we were in Germany for over 20 years, almost 21 years, and during that course of time, we had a lot of different roles and a lot of responsibilities. We did church planning. Steve worked with volunteers. I did the prayer ministry for Western Europe and then all of Europe. So there was a constant change in what we were doing and the different things that we did. So we have some slides here to show you some of the things that we did just in our last term. Now, one of the first things that we learn as a missionary is that you need to be flexible and adaptable. They preach that to you before you ever get to the field. So we learned to do that as we went along. And this picture that you see up here, we were at a meeting in Athens, Greece. It was for all our colleagues throughout Europe. So there were about 2,000 people present that week. And about half of those were children. So we had a child care team at camp come over to help out. And they realized very quickly that they did not have enough people to supervise all the kids, especially when they were swimming. So they asked the logistics coordinators, which was what Steve was doing at the time, to come and help out. So he just kind of dove right in there, as you can see, and he helped out with the kids in the pool, making sure that they all stayed safe. You get the next one? There we go. Okay, another thing that we learned quickly was that ministry is very demanding, draining. You get tired very quickly when you're especially living in a foreign country, as well as trying to minister to others. So we learned to value personal prayer retreats. We would try to schedule regular time to get away for a night or two, and just to spend more time with God, to rest and relax physically, but also to have that spiritual refreshment. Now, if you have ever met an international from somewhere else in the world, or if you've traveled somewhere else, the first question on our minds is, what do they eat? What kind of things do they like to bake or cook? So we had the ladies from our church came over one Christmas, and we taught them how to bake cookies. We were making gingerbread cookies because they don't have gingerbread cookies over there. So we had a great time of just fun and fellowship that night, baking together. We also had the students come one year to help bake cookies, and you can see they had a great time cooking and baking. There was more of a purpose, though, than just fun for them. We were using the cookies that they made as a snack for the English worship service that we were going to have the next evening. The young lady in this picture, her name is Maria. She had been in our youth group for several years. It was a youth group we had started at one of our churches. And so when she grew up and was ready to get married, she asked Steve to come and officiate the wedding for her, to do the wedding ceremony. And that was a great privilege for us because she had felt that we had influenced her life, and so that was why she wanted Steve to come and do the wedding for her. It was held in a cathedral in Magdeburg, so it was a very beautiful place to have a wedding, and a very exciting privilege for us to be a part of that. Another thing that we did in our ministry, we did a lot of prayer walking. When you first go somewhere, that just helps give you a feel for where you're at, what the people are like, what's going on in the community. We did that locally for our ministries, but we also, because of my job being throughout Europe, we got to travel to some other places to do that. So we went on this one prayer walk. This was in South Tyrol, Italy, which is in the northern part of the country. And the reason we went there is there's a large German-speaking population in that area. They're unreached with the gospel. There's nobody really trying to evangelize them at this point. And so our hopes were to help to break down that barrier and to get people into that area. The IMB has tried several times to put personnel in this area, and for some reason it has always fallen through, and that has not been a place that they've been able to put personnel. Okay, another time we were having that meeting down in Athens, Greece, and as part of that meeting, or just before that meeting, we had a training for other people involved in the prayer ministry. And as part of that, we were able to do some prayer walking. We did in the city of Athens, but then one evening we went up on, I'm pointing back there, the picture's up here. We went up on Mars Hill, and we were able to pray down over the city of Athens. And that was just an awesome experience to be in that area when you think about the history there. And another time we went up to Norway. We had new colleagues there. They'd been there maybe 4 months or 6 months at that point. They were the only workers in all of Norway, so they were a new young family, and we wanted to be able to help and support them in their ministry and to encourage them. So we went up and did some prayer walking in Norway with them. We were also involved in a local church. Steve wasn't pastoring at this point, but we were still very active, and we had started a home Bible study. And each year our church did an outdoor baptism in the river. And the exciting thing about this is that 3 of the people from this group that were being baptized were a part of our Bible study group. We met every week for Bible study and worship, just for Bible study, but we also tried to do some fun activities just to get to know each other better, to have some fellowship and some good times. So we went on a retreat in the Black Forest one year, and we did, as you can see in this picture, we had times of Bible study and worship, but we also spent some time just being out. We went for a long walk in the woods, and we played games because we had children along. And it was just a good time to get to know each other better. We also did a cookout in a local park. And if you look at this group of people, you'll probably see they don't look very German to me. And that was the case. The area we were in at this point was a very international area. There were a lot of foreigners from all over the world. And so our Bible study wasn't necessarily planned that way, but we had people, a lady from Venezuela, another from Peru, a guy from Moldova, one from Kazakhstan. We had one German and two Americans. So it was a very international group. And we just, it was a great time to be together, and just almost a glimpse of heaven as we had all these nationalities coming together. We also taught the kids how to roast marshmallows. Again, it's another thing they don't typically do in Germany. So it was just a fun time for the kids to learn that, and they just loved toasting their marshmallows. We were part of a English conversation course. Some of our colleagues in the area, and we worked together to do an English conversation course. We met each week in a local restaurant for our meetings, but we got to know the people. We were able to find out where we had common interests. And with one lady, we realized we had a common interest for hiking. She's one of the ones sitting there on the bench. And so she invited us to come along with her family and friends to go for a hike one day. And that gave us the opportunity to get to know her extended family and friends, and also to share a little bit about the gospel and our faith. We lived in a small village in our last few years in Germany. That's our apartment up there in that top, where that balcony is, that's where we lived. And they had a huge flea market in this little village every other year. It was kind of the joke that they would move the goods from this part of the town to that town, and then 2 years later the people would buy them back again and have their own stuff back. But one year we participated in that. We made some American goodies and sold them. And again, it was just a way to get to know the people in our area and to have try to make some contacts and begin relationships.
Now, I brought along with me a piece of the Berlin Wall. I'm sure it's authentic because that's what the souvenir salesman told me where I was buying it. Looks like something that could have been done in a kindergarten art class, but it says Berlin Wall, so I'm going to trust that that's the real wall, a real piece of it. Now, the wall came down 6 years before we got there, and we weren't there to experience it firsthand, but we heard many stories from other people about what it was really like, and it really was a fantastic occurrence. Sometimes we don't realize it wasn't just a wall in Berlin. The Berlin Wall was the name given for the wall that separated all of East Germany from all of West Germany. And the people in East Germany, they had to suffer a lot. I already told you about how difficult it was to get cars. One other story they told us was that you could only get oranges once a year at Christmas. This would be the time where families could go in to the store, give some kind of certificate, and get a bag of 5 oranges. That's all you could have. And the family telling us this had 6 in their family. They said even at Christmas we couldn't all have our own orange. Some of the little things that we take for granted that they didn't even have. Now, when the wall came down, it was really exciting and you could cross the other side. But one family who told us about this said that when they went ahead and finally got through to the other side, it was after midnight, and I thought, oh, that must have been so sad because nothing would be open and you wouldn't be able to see anything. And he said, no, he said it was incredible. Everybody was up all night long. All the stores, all the shops, all the restaurants, they were all open. They gave everybody 100 Deutschmark, the currency for West Germany, who came in to let them go by and experience some things they'd never seen before. It was a fantastic experience, and yet the question I ask is, did the East Germans get their freedom when the wall came down? For it depends on what our definition of freedom is, and I think we need to go to God's Word if we're really going to come away with the real definition. I like to read the verse in John 8:36 that says, "So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Now, Germans knew what it was like. East Germans knew what it was like to be in bondage. That wall was an ever-present reminder that they were slaves. They were in bondage. They could not go outside on the other side of the wall. They were trapped. But Jesus isn't talking about that. He's talking about the bondage to sin. Just a few verses earlier, he says, anyone who sins is a slave to sin. We all know what that's like. Try to stop sinning in your own willpower. It's not going to work. We're not strong enough in and of ourselves to say no to the temptations that we're constantly confronted with. It's only through Jesus Christ that we can be freed, and that's what it says in the second part of this verse, if the Son sets you free. Oh, we got a lot of ideas about how this is going to work. You know, the majority of people in the world, I think, still think if you just do enough good things and not so many bad things, God will look at the scale and see if there's more good than bad, and then you get to come in as long as you've done a bunch of good things. That doesn't cut it. Or people try to be real religious. If they can just go ahead and follow some religion, any religion, with all of their heart and they're sincere about it, that'll work. It's not going to work either. It says, if the Son sets you free. Any religion out there not focusing on the Son of God, on Jesus Christ, setting people free, is not going to provide ultimate freedom. Now, the very last part of this verse is really interesting because it's just a single word, the word indeed. If the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. The reason that word is there is because we don't understand what real freedom is. Now, I want to tell you, in Germany, we have the Autobahn. And the Autobahn is an interstate system that allows you on about half of the interstates to drive as fast as you want to go, as fast as your car will take you. Now, I never did that. I had to keep Celeste from going too fast, but you know, if you're believing that, you're really gullible because that's not the way it worked. But we drove a VW, so we could only go so fast on the Autobahn. And some people would think, man, that's freedom, you know, out there going as fast as you can, not worried about anything. Some people think winning the lottery, man, that would be great if I could just win the lottery. Some of us think, man, if I can just make it to retirement, that'll be freedom. All of those things might be fun for a while, but they're never going to give us lasting, true freedom. The problem with East Germans is that they were focused on bringing down the wrong wall. The wall separating East Germany from West Germany was the one that they tore down, and then they could travel back and forth to the two countries. But the wall of sin separating East Germans and every lost person from God, that's the wall that they needed to be working on taking down. That's the wall that will bring about lasting freedom. And all around the world today, there are lots and lots of people, millions and millions of people, who still think if they can tear down a wall, whether it's the wall of injustice, the wall of racism, the wall of gender inequality, whatever name you want to give it, they think those walls, if they tear them down, they'll have freedom, and they're always going to be disappointed. Some Germans have even told us they wish the wall could go back up, because what they experienced after that wall coming down was not a bed of roses. They all of a sudden had unemployment, they had homelessness, they had an increased crime rate, all sorts of other problems that showed them that wall coming down isn't really going to satisfy their inner heart's desire for freedom. So as we emphasize missions today and throughout this month, and you think about what you might be able to give to help out the missions effort, let's focus on praying that people would recognize the wall of sin that needs to come down in their life, and they would reach out and respond to Christ's invitation to set them free.
99% of Europeans do not have this freedom that Steve is talking about. That's a statistic that isn't very well known. When you think of Europe and all those churches and cathedrals, every city, town, and village has its own church. But those churches, unfortunately, are empty on Sunday mornings and no one attends. So the first step in people coming to faith and getting this freedom is obviously prayer, because prayer is what breaks down the barriers and opens up doors and opens up hearts. We know this as missionaries. You know this out here, how essential prayer is. Unfortunately, Satan also knows that, and he tries to keep us from praying. So part of my job was helping to encourage people to pray, either that missionaries on the field or people here back home. I helped develop resources, prayer newsletters. There's some things over here on the table that you can feel free to pick up if you want to be able to be more involved in the prayer ministry. But the reason we pray is because it works. And just one quick story about that. We were serving in the city of Chemnitz for several years. And this was in the former East Germany. During the communist years, it had been renamed as Karl Marx City because it was considered a model example of socialism and communism. So there was a lot of spiritual barriers there, a lot of darkness in that city. So we went out each week. We would do some prayer walking around the city. And one day we came to the area where the convention center was. And this convention center was used for all kinds of things. It could be, a garden show, or it could be an erotic fair. So you never knew what was going to be taking place there. And we just felt led that day to pray that God would use this facility for good events, for positive events, and maybe even a Christian event sometime. Shortly after that, we heard that Chemnitz had been chosen to be the site for the next pro-Christ evangelistic crusade, which was started by Billy Graham years ago. He no longer does it, but he was the one that started it. And it was going to take place in that convention center. By the time the event took place, we were back stateside, but we heard remarkable stories from what happened there. That convention center was filled from the first day on to capacity, and they didn't know what to do, so they started setting up tents in the grounds around that facility so that more people could come and hear and listen. It was just a remarkable and amazing story to hear the results that came from that event. So many times when we pray, we really do get more than we ask for or can even imagine. Pastor Craig has already mentioned that this is the week of prayer for international missions. So I'd encourage you to take part in that, and you might see some amazing results come out of some of those requests there today. There's a pamphlet I believe you can pick up. If you don't want the pamphlet, you can go into the internet, imb.org, and you can find the same information and some videos and things about that too. Another request is just, this is an awesome time of year for missionaries on the field around the world to share their faith. With the Advent season and Christmas coming, it just opens up so many doors. And missionaries will be very busy in the next few weeks, holding all kinds of events. It might be a concert, it could be baking Christmas cookies, or just having people in their homes. So pray for missionaries during this time of year. As you're doing these things at home, as you're decorating and preparing for Christmas, think of the missionaries around the world and just say for prayer for that their efforts will bring much fruit this year.